tough to work with. But, he was coming in there and he was out of control.
Right.
Tony has since, he and I sat at the Hall of Fame, and I like Tony Atlas today. He's cleaned his life up, but he was, a great piece of talent. Had a hell of a body.
Right.
Whether it was man-made or not, who knows?
When you did TV and you did interviews, did anybody besides Tony Atlas give you problems as far as, no, not you problems, but the company problems? They weren't able to cut a promo and retake after retake after retake, and you're like, come on.
You would ask that question. Well, would you guys like to guess? I could tell you who the most impossible guy on interviews that I had to work with.
Warrior?
Ultimate Warrior. And you know what? If I were on the telephone with him, I wouldn't have a clue what he said. Because I never knew where this guy was going, and I don't think anybody else did. I think the whole thing was a smokescreen. Sees it in the stars and this, but he had some charisma. His look was a very hot deal.
Well, were you there the night that you were when Warrior tried to hold up Vince at SummerSlam?
Oh yes, I was.
What are your memories of that?
Well, I remember the conversations, should we or shouldn't we? And it all came down to one decision, and that was Vince's decision, because it was for a lot of money. My recollection tells me it was somewhere in the neighborhood of $500,000. Does that jibe with what you understood? If somebody was going to hold me up, number one, it was wrong. Got a big pay-per-view event, premier event. He wanted to be paid more money than he agreed to right before the event, or he wasn't going to perform. No room in this business for somebody like that. No room in any business for somebody with that kind of a mindset. I'll remember Jim Helvig for that.
Right.
Because after that, you couldn't trust him. He could not be trusted.
Did you want it in a check, or did Vince have to wire it to his account? I mean, was it a check? Because if it was a check, you could have just stopped payment on it, or
Well, I don't know about the ins and outs of that.
Right.
Suffice to say, he never got the money anyway.
Right, exactly. Was there someone you saw or interviewed come in and that you thought would be a big star that didn't make it, or even vice versa? Someone that you interviewed that said would never make it and became a big star?
That's a very good question. I'm sure you spent a lot of time with that to drive me nuts. I think I had some second thoughts about a lot of people, but gosh, I mean, I've seen people come in. You say, this guy, fat chance he's going to do anything, and the next thing, he's Shawn Michaels, he's Bret Hart.
Right.
I always thought the smaller guys had a little less chance of making it. Bret initially was not a great talker. He could communicate, but he stumbled around a little bit. And I think that he was very nervous, too, about what he was doing. Shawn Michaels probably tried to do too much initially, but I'm very close to Shawn Michaels today. I like Shawn Michaels. I missed him in the AWA, but I sure caught up with him in the WWE, and at one time we even thought we could get him down to WCW. But he had a lot of loyalty to Vince.
Right.
But on the other hand, Vince also down to WCW. But he had a lot of loyalty to Vince.
Right.
But on the other hand, Vince also was very loyal to Shawn Michaels.
How approachable was Vince to you at this time period?
Vince was very approachable. I could call him at the office if I were out on the road. He would take my call. Still to this day, I have his home telephone number. Not that I would bother him at home unless it was something very important. But Vince is very approachable. Probably a little less so today than he was 20 years ago, but nonetheless, he still is accessible.
Of screwdrivers, we might as well touch about it because people are going to ask why we didn't ask you. What are your thoughts on the whole Montreal situation? Do you think Bret handled that right and Vince handled that right?
Well, I think Bret should have been a professional. He let his ego get in the way. Who was right, who was wrong. It's water over the dam, under the bridge, down the road. And the one thing I will say that surprised me, it sure made for a lot of conversation amongst fans. The internet was buzzing. The dirt sheets were loaded. And did Bret Hart really get effed? They call it the Montreal screw job. Maybe it was. Shawn Michaels know anything about it? Maybe he didn't. You'd say he had to, but it was Hebner that put the 3 count down, and the shoulder was clearly up. But Bret has to understand, you got to do business.
Who do you think deserves to be in the Hall of Fame in the future?
Oh God, I've got a list of a lot of guys. Unfortunately, there's a few of them that have left us in this world. But I would say Dusty definitely belongs in the Hall of Fame. Ric Flair, future Hall of Famer. I wanted to see the Crusher and the Bruiser inducted, and unfortunately they're both gone. How many dead guys can we induct in 1 year? But I think there's a lot of guys out there right now. Ricky Steamboat to me is a good candidate. Here's the problem we have. It's the WWE Hall of Fame. Do they have to be bona fide WWE stars or former stars, superstars? I think now that since the WWE is where it is, it represents the industry as a whole. Terry Funk should be in the Hall of Fame.
Without a doubt.
Mm-hmm.
Dory Funk Jr. should be in the Hall of Fame. And I mean, I can go on and on with that list.
Who do you think will be the next big thing in the business? What guy?
There's some guy out there right now that doesn't have a character, doesn't have a persona. He's glib. He's a good athlete. He carries himself well. He has the look. He has the feel. He has that charisma that you have to have. And we don't know that charisma that you have to have. And we don't know who he is, but he's out there. I knew Steve Austin when he was just a fledgling, stunning Steve at WCW with Brian Pillman and part of the Hollywood Blondes. But when he came up with his Stone Cold character with that beer, that was the real Steve Austin. That's the reason it worked. And there's going to be somebody right around the corner that's going to arrive, and he's going to be very, very big.
Do you think the key to getting guys over is to have guys that connect with the audience and let them be themselves?
Yeah, I think that's very important. I think they have to be themselves. The Stone Cold beer drinking character is Steve Austin. Paul Orndorff told me about this guy. He says he's great. He likes to hunt, fish, drink beer, occasionally have a little goodie. But he's the real deal.
Right.
And that's why he was so good. Shawn Michaels was a late bloomer. Bret Hart. I mean, he worked a lot of long, hard years to get where he got.
Right.
But there's somebody out there, I don't know if I see him right now, but I guarantee you The Office knows somebody. I really thought that Dave Bautista was on the cusp. He had a setback. But I think he's going to reemerge as probably one of the premier talents.
Memories of Randy Savage, and have you ever witnessed any issues that he had with Elizabeth? Because in a lot of interviews that we've done with a lot of the guys, they said that he was very paranoid, and he would put Elizabeth in the closet and lock the door. So terribly.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, if he went to the gym at television, he would lock her in the room, take the key with him. She couldn't get out.
Wow.
That's heavy. I do recall one time we were doing a Saturday night's main event. Roddy Piper and myself talked about this recently. And what we did is we were passing an apple. Had an apple here.
Right.
You probably remember,
I remember
I don't recall if it was Valentine's Day or what it was.
But the Halloween thing. I think.
The Halloween thing, that's it. But anyway, I had to pass the apple to Elizabeth. And you could hear Savage in the background going, that made me nervous.
Right.
Elizabeth had to pass it to Piper, so there might have been more heat on the exchange between those two than there would have been with me.
We just did an interview with Billy Jack Haynes, and he was telling us there was heat between Savage and Piper over something with Elizabeth. So.
Yeah, well, he was very overly protective and paranoid.
Right.
All of the above.